The basement door slammed shut with a violent echo, and Daniel felt the cold air wrap around him like a warning. His sick wife, Martha, clung weakly to his sleeve as he whispered, "Stay calm, sweetheart. They don't know what's hidden behind that brick wall." Above them, footsteps faded, a car started, and his son Adam's voice rang in his memory, "This house is ours now." The darkness settled thickly, and Martha let out a trembling whimper that cut straight through Daniel's heart. He wrapped an arm around her, forcing strength into his voice even though fear crawled up his spine. "They think they've trapped us," he said gently, "but they don't know who I really am, or what this house has been hiding for 43 years. The basement smelled of mold and old dust, but Daniel's mind drifted to a different time, when the Victorian house felt like a blessing instead of a curse. Built in 1922, standing proud on Maple Street, its wraparound porch once held summers of laughter and jasmine-scented evenings. He and Martha had moved in as young newlyweds, bright-eyed and hopeful, dreaming of the family they would raise. Their son Adam took his first steps on the polished oak floor, and Daniel thought those moments would last forever. But everything changed when Adam brought Bella into their lives, and the house slowly shifted into something cold. Bella's harsh perfume filled the hallways, her voice replaced Martha's gentle humming, and constant talk of money took over the peace they once had. Now, locked in the same house they built a life in, Daniel wondered how love had turned into betrayal. That morning had started like any other, with Daniel waking early to prepare Martha's medication and soft breakfast. She could barely speak since the second stroke, but her eyes still sparkled with recognition whenever he read her morning poem. He had just carried her tray to the bedroom when Bella appeared in the doorway, arms folded, nose wrinkled. "That smell again," she complained sharply. "Why can't you cook something normal?" Daniel kept his voice calm as he stirred the eggs, but irritation burned in his chest. "Your mother-in-law needs soft food," he said. "She can swallow this safely." Bella scoffed, muttering something about nursing home smells, and Daniel felt the first shift in the day, something dark and final. Adam joined Bella in the dining room an hour later, his steps heavy with purpose as he straightened his polished suit. The way he looked at Daniel made something inside Daniel twist painfully. "Dad, we need to talk," Adam began, sliding a folder across the table without meeting his eyes. Bella sat beside him, wearing a thin smile that never touched her eyes. "It's about the house," she said sweetly. Daniel didn't touch the papers, but he could already smell trouble in the air. Adam cleared his throat and said, "You should sign the house over to me now, just a simple deed transfer." Daniel stared at them both, stunned that his own child could ask for something so heartless. When Daniel refused, Adam's friendly mask shattered, replaced by cold entitlement. "We live here. We take care of everything," Adam snapped. "It's practically ours already." Daniel stood his ground, voice steady despite the sting. "You live in my house," he corrected, "and I take care of my wife." Bella rolled her eyes and muttered something about Daniel being selfish and stubborn. Then, without warning, Adam grabbed Daniel's arm and dragged him toward the basement door. "This house is ours now," he shouted as he shoved Daniel and Martha into the darkness. The sound of the bolt locking echoed like the end of their world. The darkness pressed in around them as Daniel guided Martha down the steps, each movement slow and careful. Her legs trembled, and her breathing came in short, frightened gasps. "It's all right, sweetheart," he whispered, though nothing felt all right in that cold basement. The thin crack of light under the door faded as Adam and Bella's footsteps disappeared, followed by the roar of the car engine leaving the driveway. Silence settled in like a heavy blanket. The air smelled of old stone and forgotten memories, and Martha's fingers gripped his arm with desperate force. Daniel swallowed hard, telling himself he couldn't fall apart, not now, not while she needed him the most. As the hours dragged on, the dampness crept into Martha's bones, making her shiver violently. Daniel pulled her close, rubbing her arms gently to keep her warm. The basement hadn't been used in years, and cobwebs hung from the corners like gray curtains. The shadows made the old furniture look like looming ghosts, watching them struggle. Martha's voice trembled as she whispered, Why would Adam do this?" Daniel felt his heart break at her question. He had no answer that wouldn't wound her further, so he simply rested his forehead against hers and whispered, "We'll get out of this. I promise." But after a long silence, something shifted in Daniel's mind, a memory that rose through the fog of fear. He remembered being 18. He remembered Henry, the man who raised him, bringing him down to this very basement. He remembered Henry's voice low and serious as he tapped one particular stone along the back wall. If desperate times ever come wilder, remember this spot. Back then, Daniel hadn't understood the weight of those words. But now, trapped with his sick wife in a basement locked by their own son, those words struck him like a spark in the dark. That brick might be their way out, or their final weapon. "I have to check something," Daniel whispered, helping Martha lean against the railing so she wouldn't fall. He moved slowly across the uneven floor, brushing past old crates and covered furniture. His fingers trembled as he reached the back wall built of rough stone, cold as winter. One by one, he pressed along the surface, feeling for the loose brick Henry had shown him decades ago. Most of the stones were solid, unmoving, but then he felt it. A single brick shifted under the pressure of his palm, just slightly, just enough to make his chest tighten with hope. "Found it," he breathed. Daniel pushed harder, and the brick slid inward with a soft grinding sound, revealing a small hidden cavity behind it. Inside, his fingers brushed against a cold metal box, an old tobacco tin Henry used to carry everywhere. He pulled it out carefully and held it close as he hurried back to Martha, who watched him with wide, worried eyes. He needed light, so he searched the nearby shelves until he found Henry's old toolbox. Inside, just as he prayed, lay a small flashlight. When he clicked it on and opened the tin, the beam revealed papers wrapped in oiled cloth, yellowed with age and heavy with secrets. Daniel unfolded the first paper under the shaky light, and his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't the birth certificate he had grown up seeing. This one carried a different name entirely, Michael Turner, and yet the birth date was exactly his. Martha stared confused as Daniel whispered, This isn't my name." His hands trembled as he pulled out the next document, an official adoption decree stamped and sealed. Every lie Henry had ever told him crumbled like dust. "Martha. I was never Henry's nephew. I was adopted as a baby," he said, his voice shattered with disbelief. Then came the letter, Henry's handwriting unmistakable even after all these years. Daniel read it aloud, voice breaking. Henry revealed that Daniel's real father, Jonathan Turner, once worked high up in government but was accused of betraying military secrets. The scandal destroyed him, and he died in prison. To protect the baby from a lifetime of shame, Henry adopted him, gave him a new name, a new life, a new identity. Martha covered her mouth, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Daniel, all these years, you never knew?" He shook his head slowly, the weight of a lifetime of lies settling heavily on his chest. Daniel sat there silently, the papers trembling in his hands as the truth washed over him. His entire life, his marriage, his work, his reputation, stood on a foundation built by someone else's fear. Martha reached for his hand with weak fingers, whispering, "You are still the man I married, no matter what name they wrote on paper." Her voice steadied him. But the revelation carried a darker side, one that sparked a single dangerous thought. Adam built his entire business reputation on the Ashwood family name. If the truth came out, Adam's world would collapse. And maybe, Daniel thought coldly, that was exactly what needed to happen. Before Daniel could speak, the sound of footsteps echoed above. Someone was back. He shoved the papers into the tobacco tin and tucked it under his shirt. The basement door creaked open, flooding the room with harsh light. Adam stood there with folded arms, and Bella hovered behind him, wearing that same smug expression. "Have you thought about our offer?" Adam asked sharply. Daniel helped Martha to her feet, letting exhaustion drip from his voice. "Your mother needs a doctor," he said quietly. "The cold air is making her worse." Adam hesitated, clearly annoyed, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. To avoid drawing suspicion, Daniel played weak and small, pretending defeat. He asked to make one phone call, just to notify her doctor. Adam tossed him a phone impatiently. Daniel dialed a memorized number, not a doctor's office, but a lawyer known for handling family disputes with ruthless precision. "Yes, this is Daniel Ashwood," he said calmly. "I need an urgent consultation today." Adam didn't catch the shift in his tone. Bella was more interested in her nails. When Daniel handed the phone back, he knew a new battle had begun, a quiet one, hidden beneath the mask of fear. 3 hours later, Daniel sat across from attorney Richard Hale, a sharp-eyed man with a presence that filled the room. Daniel laid out every document, the birth certificate, the adoption decree, Henry's letter. Hale read each one with slow, deliberate interest, his expression tightening. "Your son's business depends entirely on the Ashwood reputation," Hale said. If his clients discover he is not truly part of the Ashwood bloodline, it will destroy him. Daniel's jaw clenched. He locked us in a basement. He tried to steal our home. I won't let him get away with this. Hale nodded. Then let's fight back. A week later, the doorbell rang at the Victorian house. Daniel watched through the lace curtains as Attorney Hale and his associate stepped onto the porch, holding a thick envelope. Adam stormed into the hallway, adjusting his tie like he owned the place. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice dripping arrogance. Hale handed him the envelope without blinking. "You've been served." Adam ripped it open, and his face drained of color as he read. Bella snatched the papers, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. "Eviction notice. Fraud investigation," she shouted, voice cracking. Daniel stood silently, watching justice land its first blow. Hale's voice cut through the air like a knife. "The deed you submitted was forged. The notary died years ago. This house remains legally Daniel's." Adam's mouth opened and closed like he was drowning. This is a mistake," he stammered. But Hale didn't stop. "There will also be a full investigation into your genealogical claims," he continued coldly, "including whether you have the legal right to use the Ashwood family name in business." Bella's hand began to shake. "What genealogical claims?" she whispered. Adam froze, trapped in the very net he tried to cast around his parents. 3 days later, their living room filled with relatives, business partners, and nervous whispers. Adam had called an emergency family meeting, trying desperately to regain control. He paced in front of the fireplace, saying Daniel had become confused and unstable, claiming Daniel was being manipulated. Daniel listened calmly, waiting for the right moment. When the room grew tense, he stood, lifted Henry's tobacco tin, and said softly, "If anyone is confused, it's the man who doesn't know his own bloodline." Adam spun around, eyes wide with panic. "Dad, don't you dare." But Daniel had already opened the tin. Daniel laid the documents out on the coffee table, like a deck of cards revealing a hidden truth. "My real name is Michael Turner. I was adopted as a baby. The Ashwood name is not my bloodline, and therefore not Adam's either." Silence dropped like a stone in water. Adam's business partners looked at him as if he'd become a stranger. His relatives whispered in shock. Bella covered her mouth, horrified. "So everything we built, everything we bragged about," Daniel nodded, eyes sharp. "A lie. One you tried to use to steal our home." The balance of power shifted so completely that even Adam felt it. Adam's panic spread through the room like wildfire. He tried to speak, but every pair of eyes stayed locked on Daniel, waiting for the father's next words. Daniel lifted Henry's letter and let the quiet stretch. "Your business partners believed you were an Ashwood by blood," he said. "But you're not. You built a kingdom on a foundation that was never yours." One of Adam's associates stood abruptly, jaw tight. "We have to review our relationship," he muttered, already heading for the door. Another followed. Bella reached for Adam's arm, voice trembling. "Adam, what does this mean for us?" Adam tried to salvage what little dignity he had left. "Dad is confused," he insisted, voice rising. "He's under stress. He doesn't know what he's saying." But Martha, fragile as she was, lifted her head from her chair. "He knows exactly what he's saying," she whispered, her voice shaking but strong enough to silence the room. Adam's face twisted with frustration as he watched support slip away from him. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You locked your sick mother in a basement," he said. "You tried to force a forged deed. And now you're exposed." Adam finally understood. He had no escape. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, Adam's most influential clients had withdrawn their accounts. His business line rang non-stop with cancellations. Rumors spread quickly through Savannah's tight circles, rumors about forged documents, false heritage, and the truth behind his sudden collapse. Bella packed her suitcases in silence, her anger simmering. "You should have never touched your parents," she snapped. "Now look at us." Adam didn't respond. He simply sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor like a man watching his life burn to ash. By sunset, their car was gone from the driveway. For Daniel and Martha, the silence left behind felt strange at first, too still, too heavy. But slowly, that silence softened into peace. The house breathed again, free from the tension that had weighed it down for years. Martha's health improved with rest and warmth. Daniel would sit by her bedside, reading the same poems he once read when they were young. Sometimes she would squeeze his hand with a little more strength than the day before. Daniel knew the scars of betrayal would take time to fade, but every morning he felt a new sense of steady calm returning to their home. Daniel decided to reclaim the basement, not as a prison of memories, but as a place of healing. He hired workers to brighten the walls, add clean flooring, and install proper lights. When they were done, the space looked new, warm, inviting, no longer a shadow-filled tomb. Martha smiled weakly the first time she saw it. "It feels like a new chapter," she whispered. Daniel nodded, touching her hand gently. "A chapter we choose." The hidden cavity in the wall was sealed forever, but the truths it revealed would remain a reminder of strength, not shame. Their neighbor, Lewis Carter, began visiting often. A widower of Daniel's age, he brought fresh vegetables from his garden and helped mow the yard without ever being asked. He always greeted Martha softly, treating her with a gentle respect that warmed Daniel's heart. Sometimes Lewis stayed for coffee on the porch, listening to Daniel share old stories from before all the chaos. "Family isn't always blood, Dan," Lewis said one afternoon. "Sometimes it's the people who show up when everything falls apart." Daniel realized he was right. Lewis had become more of a son than Adam ever was. Daniel thought often about Henry's letter, about the truth of his name and the man he once was. For years, he had worried that discovering his real father's past would destroy him. Instead, he found a strange sense of freedom. He wasn't tied to the Ashwood reputation anymore, not defined by it, not controlled by it. "You're still Daniel to me," Martha whispered one evening as he held her hand. He kissed her forehead with a soft smile. "And you're still my heart," he said. The truth had stripped him bare, but it had also made him whole. Months passed quietly, and the Victorian home slowly returned to the warm place it once was. Martha's laughter, soft and delicate, began to echo through the hallways again. Daniel tended to the garden they had planted decades earlier, trimming roses she loved so much. At times he thought of Adam, wondering where he had gone and whether regret had finally reached him. But Daniel no longer carried anger in his chest. The hurt would linger, yes, but the weight of it no longer pressed him down. Peace had settled in, gentle and steady like morning light. One afternoon, as Daniel pushed Martha's wheelchair onto the porch, she looked toward the yard and whispered, "Do you think he'll ever come back?" Daniel didn't need to ask who she meant. He took a slow breath. "Maybe," he said honestly. "But not as the man he used to be." Martha nodded faintly, accepting the truth with the same quiet grace she carried through every trial. Daniel wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside her, watching the Spanish moss sway in the warm breeze. Sometimes healing wasn't loud, it was slow, patient, and beautifully quiet. Daniel began writing letters he never intended to send, but ones that helped free the anger left inside him. Letters to Adam. Letters to Henry. Letters to the man he used to be. He stored them in a wooden box on the shelf in the new basement study. Each letter felt like releasing another stone from his chest. "I'm not writing to forgive him," he told Martha softly. "I'm writing to free myself." She touched his arm with a smile. "That's enough," she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel believed her. The days rolled gently into weeks, and Daniel slowly rebuilt the rhythm of their quiet life. Each morning he made Martha her soft breakfast, read her poems, and opened the windows so sunlight would spill across the living room floor. The house felt warm again, like it was breathing with them instead of against them. One afternoon, Lewis stopped by with a basket of fresh peaches and sat with Daniel on the porch. "You look lighter these days," Lewis said thoughtfully. Daniel nodded, watching the trees sway. "I had to lose a few things to gain peace again, even if one of those things was my son. But life had a way of bringing back the pieces you thought were gone for good." One evening, just before sunset, Daniel heard a hesitant knock on the front door. His chest tightened as he opened it and found Adam standing there, thinner, unshaven, and looking nothing like the proud, polished man he once was. "Dad," Adam said quietly, eyes lowered. I don't know where else to go." Daniel didn't respond at first. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. Martha called softly from inside, "Who is it, Daniel?" and Adam flinched at her voice. Daniel stepped aside just enough for Adam to see his mother sitting near the fireplace, wrapped in a warm blanket. Her eyes widened softly when she recognized him. "Adam," she whispered, her voice fragile but steady. Adam swallowed hard, guilt twisting his features. "Mom." "I'm sorry," he said, stepping just inside the doorway. "I know I don't deserve to be here. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I wanted to see if you were okay." Martha gave him a small, gentle nod, the kind only a mother could give. Daniel watched the moment quietly, arms folded, heart conflicted. He saw the boy he once carried on his shoulders, the boy who used to run through this house with laughter. But he also saw the man who locked his own parents in a basement. Adam seemed to understand the storm behind Daniel's eyes. "I'm not here to ask for anything," Adam said softly. "I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Truly sorry." Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Sorry doesn't erase what happened," he said. "But it's a place to start." Adam nodded and looked toward the floor. "I lost everything," he admitted. "Bella left. The business collapsed. And I think I lost myself too." For once, there was no arrogance in his tone, only sincerity and exhaustion. Martha's eyes softened with a mother's instinctive compassion. "Sit down, Adam," she whispered. Daniel hesitated, then slowly nodded. Adam sat gingerly on the edge of the chair, as if afraid the house itself might reject him. Daniel studied him for a long moment, seeing vulnerability he had never seen before. For the first time in months, the three of them sat in the same room without shouting, without tension pressing against the walls. Adam cleared his throat. "Dad, I know I betrayed you. I know I treated Mom like a burden. I know I let greed blind me. I'm not asking for forgiveness today. I'm just trying to be better than the man I became." Daniel leaned back in his chair, weighing Adam's words carefully. "Being better," he said slowly, "starts with facing what you did and choosing never to repeat it." Adam nodded with a trembling breath. "I understand." Daniel didn't offer hugs or dramatic reconciliation. Instead, he offered something small but honest. "You may come visit," he said quietly. "But the trust you broke will take time to rebuild." Adam's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded gratefully. "Thank you, that's more than I deserve." Martha reached out a weak hand, and Adam took it gently, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I'll do better, Mom," he whispered. "I promise." She smiled softly, and Daniel saw something shift in the room, a fragile beginning, not forgiveness but possibility. After Adam left that night, Daniel sat quietly beside Martha's bed. She looked up at him and whispered, "He's trying, Daniel." Daniel exhaled slowly, rubbing her hand with gentle care. "Trying doesn't erase what he did," he said. "But maybe it's a start." Martha smiled faintly. "You gave him a chance. That's all a father can do." Daniel kissed her forehead and whispered, "And the rest is up to him." The house felt different that night, still peaceful, but with a crack of light breaking through old darkness. Weeks passed, and Adam returned occasionally, quiet, humble, carrying groceries or offering to fix things in the house he once tried to steal. Daniel didn't trust him fully yet, but he allowed the small steps. Louis noticed the change. "Looks like the boy is learning," he said one afternoon, while handing Daniel a basket of tomatoes. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps," he replied. "Some lessons only come after life knocks you to your knees." Louis chuckled. "Then let life keep teaching him." Daniel smiled faintly, knowing wisdom often came from unexpected places. On a quiet spring morning, Daniel stood on the porch with Martha wrapped in a soft shawl beside him. The roses bloomed brightly in the garden she loved, and birds sang softly in the magnolia tree. Daniel took a slow breath, feeling gratitude settle into his bones. "We survived," he whispered. "And we chose peace." Martha leaned her head against his shoulder. "And love," she added gently. Daniel nodded, watching sunlight stretch across the old porch. In the end, the house had kept its secrets, but it had also taught him the greatest truth. Family isn't the name you carry, but the choices you make when everything is tested. And finally, peace was theirs again.